What's up, y'all? Let's get into it. You see the purple up top? That's the Bantu, right? They're true Negroid, true human, okay? Bantu, West African pygmy was the first thing on earth, right? That's at the top of the food chain. Now, coming out of that Bantu group, that true Negroid group, is where you get your secret society, right? The Jaguar Leopard Society, the Black Panther, right? This is where all your voodoo rituals come from. Your Freemasonry comes out of this Bantu bloodline. Okay, the black nobility. Now they have a ritual, right? Rite of passage to become a Zulu or Mandinka, right? You see the Black Panther joined the Illuminati, flat out in the comics, joining their ranks, okay? It's a whole series about this art imitating life. This is not a fictional thing, right? Now that went on to become the Black Panther Party, right? But this is still all a part of the Jaguar cult. Okay, ritual combat is a rite of passage, blood and crips. Okay, the way Black Panther became Black Panther was a ritual ceremony.
Knock, knock.
Who's there?
Daisy.
Daisy who?
They see me rolling.
Black Panther.
Knock, knock.
Who's there?
Take it all in.
Daisy who?
They see me rolling.
And the Bloods. The Black Guerrilla Family, the BGF, were created inside California prisons as a revolutionary organization with a specific mandate to support the revolutionary movement being spearheaded by the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense and the Black Liberation Army, the BLA. Inside California prisons, the BGF would protect, support, educate, train, and lead African men in revolutionary ideology, military tactics, and progressive culture. The role of defender became primary assignment of the BGF due to the overt racist practices and policies of prison administrators and their lackeys in the white supremacist gang, the Aryan Brotherhood, the AB, and the Mexican Mafia, the MA, who would consistently attack Africans and target BGF, and often they were supported by the guards. The BGF functioned at all prisons in California, but would eventually the majority of its members would be regulated to 4 maximum security prisons of that time, which housed the administrative segregation units at SEG, better known as the Hole, at Soledad, as it was Max Row, O-Wing, San Quentin, the Adjustment Center, and El Folsom, 4A, and later addition to the Hole would be security housing units, the SHU 1 and the SHU 2, at Tracy Y Wing. Prison administrators took special care in keeping the known leadership of the BGS isolated and locked up inside the holes, labeling them as threats to the safety and security of the institutions across the state. However, BGF were still able to organize and establish cadres on the main line of most prisons in Oakland and Los Angeles, California. By the time Crips and Bloods gangs began to fill up California prisons, the BGF were well established and organized and supported by the majority to countering the assaults and attacks from racist guards and prisoners. The Bloods and Crips entering California prisons were young, street gang members who had formed together to combat and kill one another. Neither group had any political or progressive interest in their beginnings and were loosely organized as small groups with one leader of the group or a neighborhood calling them shots simply because he was the biggest, baddest, and most violent dude in the neighborhood and had a reputation amongst his peers to be quick to fight or try to kill someone. The Crips' identity were blue rags and most often reflected in the personality of their leaders' violent, wild, and unpredictable attitudes. Today, there are writers asserting the Crips' original design as a group of young African men who was patterned after the Black Panther Party for self-defense and even had a 10-point platform similar to the BPP.
Three fellas that get together and, we get whacked, which is, I say whack, smoke that dust and go out and make a move, and in the process of making a move and making money, the dust is already in our mind, it's going, it might tear off a couple of guns, and one of the homeboys might say, well, hey, dog, let's ride on the Denver lane, I might say, well, splendid guns, we get on, we go make a bus, right?
Community Revolutionaries in Progress. That's CRIP. Community Revolutionaries in Progress. I found no information nor evidence to substantiate this claim made 50 years after the creation of this gang. If the founders of this group designed it to be in the likeness of the BPP, Black Panther Party, there were numerous examples of the BPP utilizing the media to clarify their intentions in the community and put forth their agendas. When the local media in Southern California began reporting on the Crips, on their violent activity in the African American community, The reporters didn't know for sure.
The Black Guerrilla Family, also known as the Black Family or the Black Vanguard, is an African-American prison and street gang founded in 1966 by George Jackson and W.L. Nolan while they were incarcerated at San Quentin State Prison in Marin County, California. Inspired by Marcus Garvey, the Black Guerrilla Family, BGF, was characterized as an ideological African-American Marxist-Leninist revolutionary organization composed of prisoners. It was founded with the stated goals of eradicating racism, maintaining dignity in prison, and overthrowing the United States government. The Black Guerrilla Family was founded by George Jackson in San Quentin State Prison during the Black Power movement. The group later became a recognizable organized crime force in the United States. On August 22, 1989, co-founder and leader of the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense, Huey P. Newton was fatally shot outside 1456 9th Street in West Oakland by 24-year-old Black Guerrilla Family member, Tyrone Robinson. Relations between Newton and factions within the Black Guerrilla Family had been strained for nearly 2 decades. Former Black Panther Party members who became BGF members in jail had become disenchanted with Newton for his perceived abandonment of imprisoned Black Panther members and allegations of Newton's fratricide within the party. In his book, Shadow of the Panther, Hugh Pearson alleges that Newton was addicted to crack cocaine, and his extortion of local BGF drug dealers to obtain free drugs added to their animosity. Robinson was convicted of the murder in August 1991 and sentenced to 32 years for the crime. In 1979, former BGF lawyer Faye Stender was shot 5 times by recently paroled Black Guerrilla Family member Edward Glenn Brooks for what Brooks said was Stender's betrayal of George Jackson. Brooks forced Stender to state, "I, Faye Stender, admit I betrayed George Jackson and the prison movement when they needed me most," just before he shot her. Stender was left paralyzed below the waist and in constant pain by the assault and committed suicide in Hong Kong shortly after she testified against Brooks. Baltimore police claimed that the Black Guerrilla Family, the Bloods, and the Crips were teaming up to target police officers. Later, however, leaders of both the Bloods and the Crips denied the allegations, released a video statement asking for calm and peaceful protest in the area, and joined with police and clergy to enforce the curfew. At one occasion, gang members helped to prevent a riot at the Security Square Mall by dispersing attempted rioters. On other occasions, rival gang members helped each other.
Now the BGF is really like the Black Panther, branch. But it's like the when you behind the wall, it's like the jail gang. BGF. Now I already showed you how the gangs go upward, get into Freemasonry. But it's different tiers to it. So the Black Panthers is just another tier to kind of like the Marxist, communist, branch of this bullshit. So when you see the were-jaguar, right, like a werewolf, the American Mayan Aztec depiction of the panther was the jaguar. I'm gonna show y'all how you got spotted panthers, you got dark leopards. They interchangeable, right? You see the different societies, the Anyoto, the crocodile, right? This is all Bantu civilization, right? The Niji, right? It's like the Naga, N-E-G-E, N-A. You could still put 2 A's, but you got the 76 Tank Battalion and the 66 Infantry Division, which was called the Black Panthers. This is the original Black Panthers, the Army division of all black soldiers. Now the question is, did they name themselves the Black Panthers? That's what's going to tell whether it's a psyop or not. Did these soldiers get to name their own battalion? You heard of the war dogs and all these, War Eagles and all this shit, like, because if that's pre-selected, that would explain, you know, the paramilitary group of the Black Panthers, if they coming home from Vietnam, going back and forth from Vietnam. But, you know, most of us don't know about, we know about the Tuskegee Airmen, we know about the Buffalo Soldiers, you know, and we big up them groups, you know what I mean? They like Black history staples. But I think it's a reason why we don't know about the Black Panthers, right? Not the revolutionary group, but the military battalions, right? Now, this is exactly where the comic book character, the Black Panther, come from. Like, these not three different ideas, independent ideas, right? All of these come from the Leopard Society or the Jaguar cult here in America with the Mayans and the Aztecs and shit. But I think it's a reason why they don't teach us this in school. Because I learned about Tuskegee Airmen in school. I learned about, you know, the Buffalo Soldiers in school. But I think it's a reason why, you know, we get y'all some images. So, you know, you think, I want you to think I'm spinning the narrative, right? The pictures hit harder than the words, right? So they literally took the logo from the military battalion, right? It's the same, you see it right there, it's the same Panther, right? And you know, I remember for those of us of a certain age, I remember everybody was getting this Panther tattoo, climbing up the arm, like looking over his shoulder. I always thought it was weird, like, everybody got the same Panther tattoo. Not that they affiliated or nothing, but see, there you go right there, the one that Black Panthers use, the political party. But I just remember that tattoo everybody was getting. I rarely see any white people get it, no Chinese people, but I seen a lot of Black people with that with that motherfucking Panther climbing the arm. So, you know, y'all remember Thundercats. I think his name was Panther, was supposed to be the black dude on Thundercats. Pantera or some shit like that. But the Panther, nevertheless, on Thundercats was a black voice actor. I mean, he kind of looked black. If you remember how they drew him, the Panther dude on Thundercats. So you got all these different depictions. Of course, Black Panther, the comic book nigga associated with Africans, Wakanda. So you got all these different ideas of the Panther associated with black people, you know, and it's not coming off like the monkey insult, you know what I mean? It's not a insult or disrespectful association to be associated with the Panther. I mean, most people scared of Panther, like, you know what I mean? Like, it's a predatory, it's like the lion or some shit. So it's not a bad reference, but what's the reason for the reference? Okay, now this is another point I wanted to bring up. Did you know that all the Buffalo Soldiers was in a Masonic lodge? Right? It's like a list of like 20 of them that was all in a Freemasonic lodge. Now, there's no different for the Tuskegee Airmen. Same with the Buffalo Soldiers. Okay, so even with the Buffalo Soldiers, you know, you got Remember Fred Flintstone was in the Water Buffaloes Lodge. You know, I did the video on that. The Buffaloes was associated with the Native Americans. You know, the buffalo is associated with shamanism, right? As we saw with the QAnon looking motherfucker. We did the correlation with the Deion Sanders and the Colorado Buffs, right? The Colorado Buffaloes, they call them the Buffs. So we know the buffalo is associated with melanated people. So that's why the Buffalo Soldiers was called the Buffalo Soldiers. They say the Native Americans named them that because their hair looked like the wool of the buffalo. Right? Now this is the Buffalo Soldiers in Masonic regalia. Okay, let's get a closer look. This is the Buffalo Soldiers in the Masonic garb. Right? And I'm going to show you later the Tuskegee Airmen was no different. So both these prominent black military divisions, all black, were also all Masonic. Okay, there you see the Freemason emblem on the buffalo. Right, this is why Deion is up in Colorado. Color, meaning color. Otto, mean lack of. This is why Colorado is a 92%, 97% white PWI. Right, it's Colorado. Otto meaning lack of. Color, Otto, lack of color. Right, so that's why they put Deion in there, because it's the buffalo. Okay, now, you also know America tried to exterminate the buffalo, right? Tried to wipe out the buffalo. Now, the Tuskegee Airmen have been members of Masonic lodges, okay? And you can pause and read and see which building, which site that they was held up in, but the Tuskegee Airmen was a Masonic lodge as well. Freemasons of the air, right? So it's not like it was just one or two guys, right? That was, you know what I mean? No. They have a lodge dedicated to both. The Tuskegee Airmen have a Freemason lodge named after them, and the Buffalo Soldiers got a Freemason lodge named after them. Right? So what make you think the Black Panther military division, 76 Battalion, 66 Battalion, what make you think them any different? Okay? So you got Donald Thomas, heavy Freemason, Tuskegee Airmen. And don't forget they ran that syphilis test on them. They gave them the syphilis, and you know, I got a strike for doing a video about the Tuskegee Airmen, so I ain't allegedly. I ain't even gonna speak on the Tuskegee Airmen experience because I got a strike just for doing a video on that. You know what I mean? Medical misinformation or some shit, but go look up what happened to the Tuskegee Airmen. Okay? Well-known Masonic, you know, people in the Army. And I remember a scene from Boys in the Hood where Lawrence Fishburne was like, Trey, a black man ain't got no place in the Army. In the white man's army. Like, I remember, for some reason, that stuck with me as a kid. Like, he was talking to me, a black man ain't got no place in the white man's army. Right? You gonna fight for my freedom, fight for my freedom. You gonna make me fight for my freedom. You feel what I'm saying? I'm captive. That's like the superhero making the people they save fight with them. Like, I'm captive. I'm in chains. You got rifle in the army. You got a military behind you. Right? Alright, so let's get into this. You got the 76th 1st Battalion. Okay? Now, we know Huey Newton was a Freemason because he was in the Greek fraternity. So we know Huey was, right? But see, what you don't know is the correlation of the secret society to the Black Panther. Right? This is where it all comes together, right? Because we think the Black Panthers political party was the first black, like they just chose that. Nah, they got it from a military branch, right? And then the irony that the guy who started it is in a Greek frat. You know what I mean? The Black Panther Tank Battalion. And then the coincidence, they got Morgan Freeman, Morgan Freemason. They got Morgan Freeman, like the Freedman Bank. Okay. So, yeah, I just find it real interesting that the 76th 1st Battalion and the 66th Battalion of the Black Panthers don't have no Freemason information. But it's no way they didn't if the two other famous ones, the Tuskegee and the Buffalo Soldiers, if they both was Masonic lodges, this one got to be.
Now Washington was a little harder to take down. They look at him like the Fred Hampton of the West Coast. Remember, Fred Hampton didn't smoke, drink, or do drugs. Frederick Allen Hampton Sr. was an American Marxist-Leninist revolutionary. He came to prominence in his late teens and early 20s in Chicago as deputy chairman of the National Black Panther Party and chair of the Illinois chapter. He was assassinated on December 4, 1969 on West Monroe Street in Chicago, Illinois, by COINTELPRO operation. Well, Raymond Washington didn't smoke, he rarely drank or do drugs. Tensions were high between so-called blacks and so-called whites in LA in response to what was happening on the land and police brutality. Many so-called black militant groups form. One of the first black militant group was Marcus Garvey's group, and then the Nation of Islam. The original Black Panthers, also known as the 761st Tank Battalion, was the first so-called African-American armored unit to fight in World War II. The original Black Panthers, also known as the 761st Tank Battalion, was the first so-called African-American armored unit to fight in World War II.
The original Black Panthers, also known as the 761st Tank Battalion, was the first so-called African-American armored unit to fight in World War II.
The 761st Tank Battalion was created at Camp Claiborne in Louisiana. The unit was made up of primarily so-called African-American soldiers, who were really Washita and Seminoles, who were not allowed to serve with white troops at the time. After the war, the 761st Tank Battalion returned to the United States, but they were often greeted with hostility, skepticism, and disdain. The U.S. Armed Forces did not officially desegregate until 1948. 761st Tank Battalion was one of the first black-labeled gangs by the United States, as tensions began to rise. One day, when a white California highway patrolman arrested Marquette Fry, a 21-year-old so-called African-American man, for suspicion of drunk driving, the arrest led to a violent confrontation between Fry, his mother, and the police, and a crowd of onlookers gathered at the scene. Rumors spread that the police had kicked a pregnant woman, and tensions between the police and the crowd
escalated. This started what would become known as the Watts Riots. The Watts Riots, sometimes referred to as the Watts Rebellion or Watts Uprising, took place in the Watts neighborhood and its surrounding areas of Los Angeles from August 11th to 16, 1965. They say the riot was motivated by a number of factors, including anger at the racist and abusive practices of the Los Angeles Police Department, grievances over employment discrimination, residential segregation, and poverty in LA. The riots lasted for 6 days and resulted in 34 deaths, over 1,000 injuries, nearly 4,000 arrests, and over $40 million in property damage. The riots were one of the largest and costliest urban riots in the civil rights era. Psychiatrist and civil rights activist Alvin Poussin considered Proposition 14 to be one of the causes of black rebellion in Watts. California Proposition 14 was a November 1964 initiative ballot measure that amended the California state constitution to nullify the 1963 Rumford Fair Housing Act, thereby allowing property sellers, landlords, and their agents to openly discriminate on ethnic grounds when selling or letting accommodations, as they had been permitted to before 1963. The proposition became law after receiving support from 65% of voters. In 1966, the California Supreme Court, in a 5-2 split decision, declared Proposition 14 unconstitutional under the Equal Protection Clause of the United States Constitution, 14th Amendment. The U.S. Supreme Court affirmed that decision in 1967 in Reitman v. Mulkey, after the Watts riot. Many other groups formed in response to the police brutality that still continue. Another group using the same symbols as 761st Tank Battalion, which really was a tribe, called the Black Panther Party. The Black Panther Party, originally the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense, was a Marxist, Leninist, and Black Power political organization founded by college students Bobby Seale and Huey P. Newton in October 1966 in Oakland, California, because the Black Panther Party were using the 761st Tank Battalion symbols. They sent Elmer Geronimo Pratt to train them in military tactics. This is why Geronimo Pratt got set up by the Killer Clowns. Geronimo Pratt, also known as Geronimo Jijaga and Geronimo Jijaga Pratt, was a decorated military veteran and a high-ranking member of the Black Panther Party in the United States in the late 1960s and early 1970s. Born in Louisiana, he served 2 tours in Vietnam, receiving several decorations. Another group was the U.S. Organization. Hakeem Jamal and Maulana Karenga founded the U.S. Organization, a black group that promoted black cultural unity and social change, after the assassination of Malcolm X in 1965. The name U.S. was a pun on the phrase us and them, and the abbreviation for United States. The group's purpose was to encourage black unity and cultural and social change. Another group was called the SNCC. The SNCC was a political organization that was central to the civil rights movement of the 1960s. It was the first civil rights organization to be mainly made up of young people. After 1969, the group was renamed the Student National Coordinating Committee. Another one was called the Black Liberation Army. The Black Liberation Army was an underground Marxist, Leninist, black nationalist militant organization that operated in the United States from 1970 to 1981. Many other small groups started up, banding together to fight against the tyranny on the land from imposters. But the COINTELPRO operations, using their tactics, would later dismantle all these organizations, leaving the young so-called black youth and many so-called black communities to fend for themselves. The war was still going on. Thomas Redden was the police chief of the Los Angeles Police Department, LAPD, from February 18, 1967 to May 5, 1969. Edward Michael Davis was the chief of the Los Angeles Police Department, LAPD, from 1969 to 1978. Darrell Francis Gates was an American police officer who served as chief of the Los Angeles Police Department from 1978 to 1992. Keep all this in mind, because all these guys were Freemasons. Now, this is where Raymond Washington and Big Tookie come in at. Raymond Washington was born on August 14, 1953 in Los Angeles, California. He spent most of his life on the east side, growing up with 4 brothers on 76th Street between Wadsworth and Central Ave, growing up during the 50s and 60s. Raymond was exposed to many of the issues taking place during that time, including racism, segregation, and the Watts riots, which took place less than a mile from his home. This was also the time of the Black Panthers, an organization formed to bring peace to troubled neighborhoods. The Panthers promoted unity and community independence in South Central LA, and set up free breakfast programs for kids like Raymond Washington, who was 12 years old at the time. All these influences surrounding Washington at such a young age forced him to grow up fast. He developed a strong personality and started to become known in his neighborhood as a natural-born chief or leader. In his teen years, he would often get into fistfights at school. These fights would eventually lead to him being kicked out of many LA area high schools and being sent to a juvenile detention center. Soon, Washington was known on the streets as one of the best fighters on the east side. He rarely drank and didn't do drugs instead. He worked out constantly powerlifting, weightlifting, and boxing every day for hours, quickly developing a reputation as someone who was not to be messed with. He was knocking people out left and right. They were calling him Baby Iron Mike Tyson. The first gang Raymond Washington affiliated himself with was the East Side Avenues. However, Washington was much younger than most members of the Avenues gang, and this came to cause problems. An altercation between Washington and the Avenues founder led to a split, and in 1969, at the age of 16, Washington left to start his own gang. They were known as the Raymond Washington Crew, or the Baby Avenues at first. Raymond used military-like tactics to organize his crew. He held meetings at local parks, set up safe houses in case of attacks, and brought together leaders of neighboring gangs to form unions. He also set a dress code, classic pair of khakis pants, which became the Dickie pants that all gangs began wearing. Just think about how much Dickie Pants Company made off of so-called gang banging. They wore suspenders with ace deuce, a derby hat, which is the Monopoly man hat, the bowler hat, also known as a coke hat, billycock, bob hat, bombin, Spanish, or derby, United States, is a hard felt hat with a rounded crown, originally created by the London hat makers Thomas and William Bowler in 1849. It has traditionally been worn with semi-formal and informal attire. They also wore leather jackets, earring in the left ear, a black glove on the left hand, and a bandana on the left side. Some of them would also wear combat boots as well. A lot of the Crip dress code comes from a combination of how the Black Panthers used to dress and how the hustlers and pimps used to dress back in the 1960s. During this time, there were other gangs such as the Slauson Boys, South Park Boys, Manchester Park Boys, Cafe Boys, a gang called the Smack Boys, and a few more. These all later evolved into being under one umbrella, the Crips. Raymond had a simple and very effective tactic of expanding the Crips. He would go to the leader of another gang and fight him. He went straight to their main man. Once he put the guy on his back, everyone else would join up and follow him. He went to other neighborhoods and said, "Either join me or become my enemy." Most kids living on the edge of thuggery joined. Some did not. Those that were fighters who were not intimidated kept to their own gangs. Eventually, the pressure of the Crips became so intense, so bloody, that the other gangs, the Peru and Compton, and the Brims near USC, aligned themselves into a loosely knit gang group called the Bloods. The Swans and Bounty Hunters also signed on with the Bloods Alliance, and the bloody battle of South Los Angeles, Watts and Compton was on. Word was getting around that Raymond Washington was the best fighter in town. Not to mention, he had a whole crew following him. As word got around, many started saying that Raymond wasn't the baddest guy in town. They were saying there is another guy on the west side named Big Tookie. If you beat him, you can then say you're the baddest guy in town. You see, back in the day it was about knuckling up. Knuckle up is a contemporary slang term that means to fight or get ready to fight. As time went on, it became known as catching a fade. Catching a fade means to square up or put up your set. Fade means to fight or deal with someone appropriately. Other conjugations of this slang include, I'm gonna run your fade, it's a fade on sight, etc. Back in the day, all most OG's Crips did was pump iron all day and work on their hands. They were waiting on a fight to see how much they had progress. Fighting was fun to them. It was sport. Crips never back down from a fade.
Keep in mind, the Williams are a royal bloodline. Keep in mind, the Williams are a royal bloodline. Keep in mind, the Williams are a royal bloodline.
Keep in mind, the Williams are a royal bloodline.
Tookie was born Stanley Tookie Williams III on December 29, 1953, in New Orleans, Louisiana. But from the day he was born, everyone in his family just called him Tookie. His mother was 17 years old when she had him, and his father left before Tookie's first birthday, leaving Tookie's mother to raise him on her own. Being a black woman living in the South in the 1950s, it was almost impossible for Tookie's mother to find a way to make good money, so in 1959, in search of a better life for her and her son, she and 6-year-old Tookie boarded a Greyhound bus headed for Los Angeles, California. When Tookie and his mother got to Los Angeles, they moved into an apartment on the west side of South Central. The apartment in the neighborhood looked beautiful from the outside, green manicured lawns and rows of perfectly built 3- and 4-bedroom homes, but the neighborhood wasn't anything like it appeared to be, and was actually one of the most dangerous areas in all of Los Angeles. With high rates of unemployment, poverty, and street crime, drugs, violence, prostitution, all of it was right outside Tookie's front door. The first time Tookie went outside to play, he got into a fist fight with kids from the neighborhood, who jumped him to see how tough he was. He was 6 years old. From that day on, Tookie learned that conflict and brutality was a regular thing in South Central. Every day he stepped outside, he'd witness different acts of cruelty and rage, fighting neighbors, hustlers preying on the weak and vulnerable, criminals violently taking what didn't belong to them. Everybody was at war over something. The cold and tough way of his neighborhood wasn't the only thing Tookie was subjected to as a kid. He also had to deal with racist police officers who would harass and attack South LA residents of all ages without cause. Tookie had constant exposure to violent behavior coming from all sides. Tookie's young mind began to believe that all the brutality around him was normal. He became desensitized, numb to it all. He decided to do whatever it took to survive. While Tookie was getting an education in the streets, he was also attempting to get an education in the classroom. He was a good student. He was quiet, kept to himself, and enjoyed reading. All throughout elementary school, he got A's and B's in class. Tookie couldn't escape the world around him. When he was 12, he started smoking weed and sniffing glue by the time he was in high school. He was on to heavier drugs, and his grades began to drop, and
In 1966, America saw the birth of the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense, founded by Huey P. Newton and Bobby Seale in Oakland, California. Their mission: protect black communities from police brutality and demand equality. The party was active in the United States between 1966 and 1982, with chapters in many major American cities, including San Francisco, New York City, Chicago, Los Angeles, Seattle, and Philadelphia. They were also active in many prisons and had international chapters in the United Kingdom and Algeria. Upon its inception, the party's core practice was its open carries patrols, cop watching are designed to challenge the excessive force and misconduct of the Oakland Police Department. From 1969 onward, the party created social programs, including the Free Breakfast for Children programs, education programs, and community health clinics. The Black Panther Party advocated for class struggle, claiming to represent the proletarian vanguard. The FBI's COINTELPRO aimed to neutralize perceived threats, including the Black Panther Party.